After making the Eastern Conference Finals in the 2020 season, the Boston Celtics set a very high bar for themselves. The Celtics finished third in the East that year, and what made them so exciting is that they were being led by a 21-year-old Jason Tatum and a 23-year-old Jaylen Brown. Boston may have not made it all the way to the finals that year, but with the young talent that they had, the expectation was that they would be a threat to go all the way year in and year out. That's why it was so disappointing when the Celtics finished just 7th in the East the following year and got bounced out in the first round of the playoffs. For at least the first 50 games of this season, the Celtics were putting together what looked like another disappointing year as they stood at 500 after 50 games. However, Boston has completely flipped the script as of late, and while they have had an easy schedule, they've shown me enough in these last 16 games to be worthy of a dark horse label. In today's video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on what's caused this turnaround for the Celtics and how likely it is that they win it all this year.
Murray inside, incredible. They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
Boston's recent stretch of winning basketball can be attributed to three main factors. Number one, their go-to starting lineup has been healthy. 2, their offense has been much more team-oriented. And 3, their defense has been even better thanks to a change in their defensive scheme. When the Celtics traded Kemba Walker for Al Horford this past summer, it brought change to their starting lineup. At full health, Boston has rolled out a starting lineup of Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Robert Williams. Unfortunately for the Celtics, this group has started together in just over a third of their games thus far. This has been a big deal because the Celtics are not a very deep team. That being said, even if just one of those usual starters are out, it's had a huge impact on Boston's ability to win games. In the games that Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, and Rob Williams have started together, the Celtics have a record well over 500. This means that when one or more of these guys are out, Boston has a record below 500. This is a huge drop-off in the win-loss column, and as I said, it speaks to the Celtics' lack of depth. However, Boston's health is not the only reason why they've been successful lately. A big reason why the Celtics struggled last year and for a large part of this year is because their offense was predictable. When the Celtics made the conference finals in 2020, they had a number of dynamic offensive weapons. Obviously, they had their rising young stars in Tatum and Brown, but they also had veterans like Kemba Walker and Gordon Hayward that could take pressure off of them. If you look at their scoring distribution that year, you can see that Boston was not heavily reliant on Tatum or Brown. More importantly though, Kemba and Hayward took a lot of pressure off Tatum and Brown to make plays for others. This meant that on a nightly basis, Tatum and Brown only had to worry about scoring the ball and playing good defense. They didn't have to worry about initiating the offense or setting up their teammates. They could simply go out there and focus on putting the ball in the basket, and even then, they weren't expected to average 25 to 30 points either. With that in mind, it hurt the Celtics when Hayward left to go play in Charlotte and Kemba started to deal with injury issues. Over the past year and a half, the Celtics have experienced their fair share of growing pains as their offense was predicated on iso ball and manipulating switches. When shots were falling, things looked good, but when they weren't, it was hard to watch. When a team doesn't move the ball on offense, it not only gives them worse looks at the basket, but it hurts the morale of the team as well. Players want to touch the ball, get a rhythm going, and feel involved on the offensive end. When that doesn't happen, it creates a lack of interest in the game, which affects the effort one gives on defense. Looking back, it was an adjustment period for Tatum and Brown, as they not only had to take on a larger scoring load, but they had to learn how to balance out their scoring with their playmaking too. In addition, the Celtics have had a fair amount of roster, rotation, and personnel turnover these past 2 seasons, so the entire team has been adjusting, not solely Tatum and Brown. However, I would be lying if I said that the growth of their 2 young stars hasn't played a huge part in their winning ways this year. While Boston's ISO-heavy offense was inconsistent, what made it worse was that too many of their ISOs resulted in contested jump shots. Now, Jason and Jaylen are talented enough scorers to make tough shots, but the percentage at which they made their shots was not the issue. The problem was that by settling for so many jumpers, the defense they were playing against could simply stand their ground. Over these last 16 games, Boston's offense has been more effective because Tatum and Brown are attacking the paint with more aggression. These two have improved so much as finishers during their time in the league, and that's because they've progressively learned how to embrace contact. Many players drive to the rim looking to draw a foul, but the reason that doesn't work is because natural contact has to occur for something to be considered a foul. Because Jason and Jalen are attacking looking to score, they're more efficient around the rim, they're drawing more fouls, and most importantly, they're forcing the defense to scramble and overreact to their drives. This has opened up plenty of passing lanes for them, and they've done a good job of finding their teammates. This is so good to see because, as I mentioned earlier, the Celtics did not always expect Tatum and Brown to make plays for others while also averaging 25 plus points. These past 2 years, Jason and Jalen have had to adjust to a bigger role, and while we've seen flashes of them being able to handle that responsibility, they're now starting to show that they can handle it on a nightly basis. While it's been great to witness the development of Tatum and Brown, these two are not the only reason why Boston's offense has been better. Another noticeable improvement has been the Celtics' chemistry with Rob Williams on lob passes. This season was Williams' first as a full-time starter, and with that increased role, his teammates had to learn how to play with him. As of late, Williams has been catching tons of lob passes from many different sources, and it's made the Celtics harder to defend. Whenever a Boston player drives into the paint, defenses have to be cautious with how aggressively they stop the ball, because if they come too far forward, that's going to be an easy 2 points for Boston. As a whole, this team is making smarter decisions, and their chemistry with one another continues to improve, but something that's getting overlooked is their pace in the half court. Boston has struggled when they've played slow, stagnant basketball, but they've been making more quick, impulsive decisions recently, and it's been paying off. The Celtics have 5 capable passers in their starting 5, and good playmakers in Derek White and Grant Williams coming off their bench, so plays like this should be the norm. On top of that, Boston has done a great job of getting into their sets quickly. Even when they don't make 5 to 6 passes on a given possession, Boston has done a good job of playing with purpose. In the past, this team would have far too many possessions of Tatum and Brown playing hero ball, which is contrary to the idea of playing with intent and purpose. Rather than simply giving the ball to their best scorers and getting out of the way, the Celtics will try to put them in better positions to succeed by attacking before the defense is completely set. When the Celtics move the ball from side to side, get into the paint, and make quick decisions, this team is extremely difficult to defend. Unfortunately, they can still be inconsistent with the way they run their offense. However, their elite defense can make up for that. The Celtics have been an elite defensive team all year because they can switch everything. Smart, Brown, and Tatum can defend very well on the perimeter, but they're also big enough to switch onto taller players and hold their ground. In the case of Horford and Rob Williams, they do a great job of protecting the paint and making life tough on opposing bigs, but if they get switched onto a smaller guard, they're mobile enough to play strong defense, especially in the case of Rob Williams. Williams is very light on his feet, but he's also an incredible athlete, which makes him hard to shoot over. There are many times where Williams will give his man space, knowing that he has the length and athleticism to lunge at his man and affect their shot. Knowing that he has great foot speed, athleticism, and defensive instincts, Boston has been using Rob Williams as a free safety more often. Rather than putting him on the opposing team's best player, the Celtics prefer to use him as a help defender who can wreak havoc. Rob is one of the leading shot blockers in the league, and unlike some rim protectors, his numbers do reflect how impactful he is. Williams is highly intelligent, and he won't try to make a play unless he thinks it will be for the good of the team. By committing Williams to this role, the Celtics' team defense has gone to another level, and it's for this reason that a lot of people are high on this team. In a vacuum, Boston has plenty of great individual defenders, especially after they added Derek White and Daniel Tice at the deadline, but what makes this team so special is the way they play together. To illustrate just how good their defense has been, I want to focus on the way they've played in recent games against Trae Young, Jokic, and Embiid. When Atlanta played the Celtics a few weeks ago, Trae scored 30 points, but he shot just 9 for 26 from the field. This is because Boston was making life difficult for him out on the perimeter, and they were converging on him very well when he drove to the rim. Boston's help defense was phenomenal in this game, and whether he was attempting a crafty layup at the bucket or trying to throw a lob pass to a teammate, Trae clearly wasn't able to comfortably do the things he's accustomed to doing. When the Celtics went up against Denver, they forced Jokic to commit 9 turnovers. With Boston rolling out bigs like Horford, Tice, and Rob and Grant Williams, they don't exactly have a huge interior presence. With that being the case, you might think that they'd struggle to defend someone as skilled as Jokic, but the reason they were successful is because they stopped him collectively. A big reason why Jokic is so dominant is because he outsmarts his opponents. In most cases, he's one step ahead of the defense, but there were many instances where the Celtics were one step ahead of Jokic. Whenever he was in a post-up situation, all of Boston's defenders were keyed in on him and were paying attention to what he was doing. If he put the ball on the floor, Boston provided excellent help defense from places he wasn't expecting, which forced him into a tough shot or turnover. Even when Jokic thought he had a man open, the Celtics were able to read his eyes and pick off his passes. Finally, in what I consider to be their most impressive performance of the year, Boston held Joel Embiid to just 19 points on 3 of 9 shooting from the field. The Celtics made it clear in this game that they were not afraid of Philly's supporting cast. If Embiid got the ball on the post, Boston was throwing an immediate double team at him to the point that Embiid felt very rushed on offense. He was settling for a lot of jumpers this game, and even when he did get a bit of momentum heading towards the basket, the Celtics did a great job of converging on him. Embiid did end up getting to the line 16 times in this game, but considering how dominant he's been this year, I don't think you could have asked for a better performance from Boston that night. At the end of the day, it's great to see a team like Boston playing well because every NBA fan knows how much potential they have. While I'm confident that this team can make some noise in the playoffs, there is a reason why I view them as a dark horse rather than a legit contender. On the defensive end, this team is elite and they can match up with anyone, but I'm still concerned with their offense and their lack of depth. Boston's offense has definitely looked a lot better as of late, but there are still times where they revert back to their bad habits. There are moments where the ball sticks in one player's hands, there are times where someone will try to force the issue which results in a bad play, and there are instances in which an open man is simply missed. When you couple that with the fact that Boston has not been a good three-point shooting team this year, it's hard to know if they can be consistent enough to win 4 playoff series. Tatum and Brown are both having down years from 3, and their supporting cast features quite a few inconsistent shooters like Marcus Smart, Derek White, and Al Horford. Ultimately though, my biggest fear with this team is their lack of depth. Yes, rotations do shorten once the playoffs start, but the Celtics have had a short rotation for most of the season. While this is helping them win games during the regular season, I worry that they'll be too fatigued by playoff time to make a long run. Boston hasn't had a major injury this year, but 4 of their 5 starters have missed at least 10 games so far, which could be traced back to the heavy minutes they're getting. Boston Celtics are a very good team, and at the making of this video, they are just a few games back of the 3 seed, but I don't think that this is the year for them. I could definitely see them winning a round or 2 in the playoffs, but ultimately, their inconsistent ball movement, streaky shooting, and lack of depth will be their downfall. Anyways, that's going to be all for today's video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts down in the comments below. And with all that being said, I'm out, and I'll see you in the next video.